Welcome to the preaching ministry of First Cumberland Presbyterian Church of Chattanooga. This recording is simply the sermon portion of our worship service. To experience our full worship service, we encourage you and invite you to join us Sunday morning at 11 in our beautiful sanctuary located at 1505 North Moore Road.
We are continuing our summer series on the Apostles' Creed, and today we have those two clauses that we say all the time but may wonder what in the world do they mean. I had fun this week trying to explain them to children. Now let's see if we can learn it for ourselves. Those two clauses are, I believe in the Holy Catholic Church and the communion of saints. One of the biblical passages that I think best describes these concepts for us comes from Hebrews, the 11th chapter, and then into the 12th chapter. Most of the 11th chapter is a catalog of all of the saints, all of the faithful people. I want to pick up towards the end of the 11th chapter, the 32nd verse, when the author of Hebrews, who is probably more a preacher than an author, says, "And what more should I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, obtained promises, shut the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, and were made strong out of weakness, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight. Women received their dead by resurrection. Others were tortured, refusing to accept relief in order to obtain a better resurrection. Others suffered mocking and flogging and even chains and imprisonment. They were stoned to death. They were sawn in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in skins of sheep and goats, destitute, persecuted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and holes in the ground. Yet all these, though they were commended for their faith, did not receive what was promised, since God had provided something better so that they would not, apart from us, be made perfect." And then into the 12th chapter, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us, looking to Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith, who for the sake of the joy that was set before him endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and has taken his seat at the right hand of the throne of God." My brothers and sisters in Christ, this is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Pastor Nadia Bolts-Weber was commissioned to do a live Zoom meeting and offer a message of encouragement and hope during the pandemic. And the person who commissioned her to do this said, "We are living in unprecedented times. Will you do a talk on unprecedented hope?" Pastor Weber says she worked on that for several days and she was just working in vain. She just couldn't figure out how to do that. And she said, "I didn't have any problem with the hope part, but she kept getting hung up," she said, "on the unprecedented part." And she said she finally realized that for hope to be true hope, it can't be unprecedented. There has to be a precedent. A hope that's already been tested by real human beings over real time and found to be real and true. She says she recognized that our hope can't be put in the Dow Jones Index, but in the faith of Abraham and Sarah. We can't put our hope in the government, but in the hope of God, but in God, in the God of Isaiah and of Mary Magdalene. We put our hope in this grand story that we find ourselves a part in, part of which we heard in Hebrews this morning. And so she says we reach backward and we grasp the hands of all of those who have gone on before us. And we reach forward into the promises of God, and we're able to stand firmly in the present reality without that reality consuming us. I think that's exactly what the author of Hebrews is trying to tell us. And it's exactly why week after week we confess that I believe in the Holy Catholic Church. I believe in the communion of saints. All of that Hebrews chapter 11, as I mentioned, is a catalog of all those who have gone on in the faith before us. And the preacher gives us all of the big names: Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, all of those. And then no less than the big names and the important names, we also have ones that we've never heard of, but people whose stories are recounted. Some of who have been able to achieve great things, and others who have gone through great calamities and great suffering for their faith, but all of them faithful people. The author is suggesting that we don't merely look backwards for inspiration, but rather is saying pretty much what Pastor Weber said, that we reach back and we grab the hands of all of those, because the author says that we are surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses. You are probably aware of what the author is referring to is a stadium, probably the Olympic Stadium, where all of the retired athletes who in the past have run their races and already won their olive crowns, they are in the stands and they are cheering on those who are in the present time and now are running the race that is set before them. And so they are cheering encouragement, and their wisdom can be passed down to those, and all of the things that those who are running the current race can receive from those who have retired, if you will, who are in the stands. We have this great cloud of witnesses that are not there merely for our inspiration, but actually are as a part of the communion of saints, actively encouraging us, celebrating us, and offering to us, if we are willing and able to accept it, the wisdom they have for how to live faithfully in a world that is so often uncertain. The Holy Catholic Church. And Catholic, of course, is just a fancy word for universal. First, though, is you and me. We are in this local church together. We are in this life together, and we are to support and love and encourage one another, not merely to get through life, but to run the race of faithfulness that God has set out before us. The wonderful thing is, we are not alone, are we? We're not alone in the local church, you and I. There are churches down the street and elsewhere in the county and the state and the nation and the world. And the church universal that has existed throughout all of time is there for us as well. And so we recognize we have brothers and sisters all over, and they're not the competition. Sometimes we make the mistake of seeing other churches as competition. Not competition, but brothers and sisters running the race with us. And they and we are the saints together who are in communion with one another. For saints are not only those who are passed on, but saints are all of those who are followers of Jesus Christ and are trying to live out His way of life. And so we have discovered that we are not running this race relying merely on history or memory alone, but we do have this great cloud of witnesses, those who have gone on before us and those who are running the race with us, who continue to support and cheer and guide us and run right along with us. When C.S. Lewis was making his journey of faith, he got to a point in which he believed that there's a creator. But he was only at the point where he believed that there is this higher power, if you will, but he wanted more specificity. And so he decided that he would look at as many world religions as he could and find the one that he thought would best describe this God that he believed in, or at least that he wanted to believe in. Because he was a great intellectual, he set up specific criteria for himself to know whether or not a religion was a religion that had something that he could truly believe in, that he could put his faith in quite literally. And chief among those criteria was a religion of a creator God that would be a religion that was open and accessible to all. If this is the Creator who has created all of us, then all of us must be able to relate to this Creator. And it does not matter what the language or the culture was. It did not matter whether the person was an intellectual or the person was not an intellectual. It should be understandable to a child and also comprehensible to an intellectual. His research led him to believe that Christianity was indeed that religion that broke down all barriers between people and indeed was a faith for all of humanity. Another way of saying that is that Christianity offered a holy Catholic, a holy universal church, and it offered a communion of saints. All were saints regardless of who they were or where they came from. But when we think about the barriers that tend to separate people, we, like Lewis, tend to immediately think of race or language or politics or ideology or maybe even theology. But in fact, the greatest barrier that separates people is death. All we humans are separated by the living and the dead. And throughout all of human history, we have vainly tried to bridge that gulf. The pyramids in Egypt were literally the largest structures that human beings ever made for thousands of years. And they were built in the effort to try to close that huge gap between the living and the dead. But it was not until Jesus chose to enter into the great chasm of death that barrier between human beings was obliterated. And so when we confess that we believe in the Holy Universal Catholic Church and the communion of saints, we are confessing that we are doing just what it says in Hebrews. We hear and we feel and we know the support and encouragement from those who had gone on before us and yet are still with us because that gap has been bridged. We are reaching back and we're holding their hands. And we look to Jesus, as the Hebrews tells us. We look to Him. He is the perfecter and the pioneer of our faith. We look to Him and we grasp the promises that He has made, the promises of God. And by doing those things, we are able to run the race set before us. We are able to live in this uncertain time. Back during the Depression, Lee's grandparents kind of accidentally bought some lake property on a lake in Georgia. And although it really wasn't their initial intention, the lake property quickly became the place where their family gathered. And their immediate family for sure, but even their wider family would just gather there, particularly on the 4th of July. But Lee's grandparents were amazing, wonderful, faithful people. And they realized that this property that they had kind of stumbled into had actually been given to them as a gift from God. And they were called to be good stewards of that property. And so it became not a property merely reserved for the family, but a property they tried to use in mission. There's no telling how many children's groups and youth groups and Sunday school classes and even church-wide parties were held at that lake. There's no telling how many children's camps came and spent a day at the camp, at the lake, enjoying the water and the boats and all of the things that lake house, that lake property had to offer. Ministers and seminary presidents and missionaries galore came there to be able to rest and relax and be renewed so that they could do the difficult work that was set before them. Lee's grandparents knew that that place was a place they should be stewards of. And after they died, the family tried to continue that wonderful, wonderful tradition that they had. Some years after they passed away, I hosted a minister's retreat at the lake, and a number of my friends came to this retreat. We hired a retreat leader to lead us in worship and in prayer and in study, and we also spent time enjoying the lake and all that it had to offer. And one evening I happened to walk into sort of the main living room. It was in the wintertime, and there was a cheerful fire there in the fireplace. There were a couple of pastors sitting on the couch just having a wonderful conversation together. There was another 3 or 4 around the game table playing a board game together. There was one sitting next to the fire in a chair reading a book. And I was just overwhelmed with how beautiful that scene was. These people who were coming together to enjoy one another's company and to rest and to be renewed. And I was just led to pray. And my prayer was something like this: God, I don't know exactly how this works, but if somehow you can open up the veil between heaven and earth and let Rep and Reese, that was Lee's grandparents, let them see that this property is still being used in exactly the ways that they wanted it used. I have to tell you that even in repeating this story now, I can feel the hair on the back of my neck raise up, because in that moment, I just truly felt as if God did just that. And I was in the presence of her grandparents again. I could sense them smiling at seeing that this place was still being used to help God's faithful servants try to make sure that they had what they needed to do the work that God was calling them to do, to run the race that was set before them. Brothers and sisters, we have each other. And we have all of those who have gone on before us. And we have Jesus Christ. And so let us, with one hand grasping the hands of those who have come on before us, and another hand grasping the hope and the promise of God, let us run the race together, even hand in hand, as we run the race for this time and for this place. And then there will come the time when we too are a part of the great cloud of witnesses for those who come past us. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Thank you for joining us for this message from the preaching ministry of First Cumberland Presbyterian Church. Once more, we hope you'll join us in person Sunday at 11 a.m. for worship.